Back again with me this morning on Maryland Today, one of my close personal friends. I guess I can probably say that now.
Absolutely.
So should I call you financial expert, Deanna Booker?
You know, I sort of like guru. No, I'm kidding.
Guru. Okay, we can go. Well, Deanna Booker, she's the manager of community outreach and communication at Consumer Credit Counseling Service of Maryland and Delaware. Deanna, always a pleasure to have you here.
It's always my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, Deanna, we are back on a topic that I know all too much about, borrowing too much money for college. Now, students are back on campus. They're studying very hard. Educational finance, still a big issue, even though schools are already in session, kids are already there. Why is that?
It's because I think the cost of a college degree continues to go up and up and up. So to deal with this tuition bump, students and their parents continue to borrow and borrow and borrow in record amounts, honestly. In fact, Americans now owe more on student loans than they do on credit cards.
It's wild, isn't it?
It's crazy. It's crazy. And the other side, or the other thing, is that employment prospects continue to be sluggish. So while more grads did find jobs last spring, many of them are still struggling to find work, or they've had to take jobs that don't cover the amount that they need to be able to pay, So these factors draw attention to the fact that today's students might still face an uphill battle when it comes to being able to repay all the money that they've borrowed.
I know a lot of students and parents were sitting and waiting to hear news from Congress over the summer, but they did pass this summer. It's got some good and bad news, though. How will this new law affect students and their families?
Well, I think there's good news for this fall's undergraduates. Under the new law, those who take out government loans right now, this fall, are just going to pay 3.86% in interest. That's a substantial savings over the 6.8% rate hike that took effect earlier this summer prior to the legislation. The bad news is that this interest rate is likely to rise over time because it's now tied to the rate on Treasury notes. So this means as the economy improves and the interest rate goes up, the rate on government student loans do too. So it's kind of a double-edged sort of thing. So a senior who takes out a college loan a few years from now may see the interest rates that are 7% higher than they are right now. So there's kind of a flip side to it.
Why can't we just have good news situations?
Well,
it's always a good news and a bad news
I'm
situation.
sorry.
It's all right. Well, when it does come to student loan debt, how can our young adults limit how much they take on here?
Well, I think the first thing and the big thing is to begin by determining how much you and your parents can actually afford to pay for college, and then choose a school based on that decision, based on that assessment. If you've got limited resources, consider attending a community college or a local college where you can live at home. If the decision is made that a student can afford and their parents can afford for that student to go away to school, you really want to research how to limit major college-related expenses like housing. For example, which is less expensive, living in the dorm or living off campus? You really have to have those conversations and make those kinds of decisions. Before you take out a student loan, research and apply for other funding. Grants, scholarships, all of that. Students and their parents really have to look deeply into those sorts of things because every dollar you qualify for in a grant or in a scholarship is one less dollar that you're going to have to pay back, in a loan. So it's really important that they do some research.
Now, this is a topic that you've been dealing with yourself because I understand your daughter just started her first semester in college. So this has been an ongoing conversation in your household, I'm sure. How did you help her limit the amount that she's borrowing for her education?
Oh, my gosh. She did just start. Hey, Simone. But, it really has been the topic of conversation, and we really had to be honest and realistic. And so we had to talk to her about where can we afford for you to go? And just like I said, when you asked me that question just prior to this one, we had to do research and we had to think about what scholarships, what grants. And I was amazed, honestly, at the number and the amount, the sheer volume of opportunities that were out there for her. Everybody's offering a scholarship. Wendy's, which is a place that she loves to eat, Wendy's, believe it or not, is offering a scholarship. So we really did just have to do the work and really find out what kind of other options were out there because we don't want to be saddled with her school debt. I don't necessarily want her to come out of school with a whole lot of debt. Now, granted, we had to get some loans, but we had to be careful about which loans we chose, making sure we understood all the options. So you have to do that work. I had to do that work. So I can speak from experience. And it's a process. It's not something that happens overnight. It's not necessarily easy, but you've got to do it.
Absolutely. So now that she's in school, what can a student do to help hold down the amount they borrow?
Well, and I say this every time I come here, no matter what we're talking about, but it's about a budget. If a student doesn't already have a budget, they need to set one up quick and they need to stick to it. If you've never done something like that before, at Consumer Credit Counseling, we can help. We have an interactive budget worksheet on our website. You can get free budget counseling at one of our offices or by calling our toll-free number, 1-800-642-2227. But having that budget is key. It's crucial. Students want to avoid spending money on things that they don't need. If you live in a dorm, don't take out the full meal plan unless you really plan to use it, Simone. If you live in an apartment, buy and cook meals at home instead of going out or hitting the vending machines on campus.
Simone,
exactly. I think it really comes down to only using your student loan money for necessary college-related expenses, not dipping into these funds to pay for new clothes, weekend trips, spring break, that sort of thing.
Tattoos, Simone.
Oh my gosh.
I'm just kidding. All right. So this is a question that myself 10, 15 years ago probably would have loved to ask you at the time, but it's still an important question. What advice do you have for students who want to pursue a field of study that may not pay well or provide easy employment once they graduate?
Wow, that's a great question. I'd say think twice before signing up for lots of student loan debt. Again, remember, you're going to be responsible for paying what you owe once you graduate. And student loans, I want to make this point, student loans are not debts that are dischargeable through bankruptcy. So while you're in school, consider working part-time. This is going to help reduce the amount you owe when you get out. If you're able to find maybe a paid internship or a lower level job at a career-oriented workplace, that kind of thing might provide you with experience and contacts for when you get out. Maybe that can help turn into something full-time. The other thing I want to point out is that students really have to be conscious of limiting their parents' liability. Simone, not necessarily asking them to co-sign. Not necessarily asking them to co-sign on student loans. It isn't fair, to a certain degree, to expect parents to shoulder the total financial responsibilities for students if they're not able to find jobs when they come out, before their loans come due. When it comes to graduation, I would just say to students, have an exit strategy. What are you going to do if you aren't able to find a good job once you leave school? Study your options. Have a contingency plan long before, this time arrives, just so you can really be thinking about how am I going to make this work, if I have to go in a different direction.
It's great to talk about all these options, but the reality of the situation is that college costs are going up really fast,
right?
And maybe parental involvement isn't quite as much as it used to be as far as financial situations go.
Right.
Many students, they really can't afford to attend college without taking out those student loans.
That's true.
What advice do you have for those people that just need to take out that money if they want to pursue their education?
Yeah, I think that the thing I would say first is that before you apply for a loan, shop around. Take a look at all the different types that are out there. Understand everything that they entail. Make sure you familiarize yourself with common, student loan terms like deferment and forbearance, understanding what all of those things mean. Before you sign a loan contract, make sure you know how it works. How much have you borrowed? How much interest are you being charged? When does the loan come due? What options are available if you can't make the payments, at that time? Really having an understanding, a sense of how everything's going to work. The other thing I want to say is, if possible, avoid obtaining loans from private lenders. They may offer a lower interest rate, but generally, private loans come with less repayment options. If you qualify, in most cases, a public loan is just kind of safer.
So how important is it to involve parents in the student loan process?
Well, I think if students are relying on their parents for financial support when they go to school, then obviously parents are going to play a pivotal role. So they deserve to be included, I guess is what I'm saying. If a student is a minor, they're probably going to be required to provide information on funding applications and that kind of thing about their parents, or their parents are going to be required to, I guess I should say it that way. They also may provide valuable input reviewing and comparing student loan products. So I think it pays for students to involve their parents and for parents to be involved as much as they feel comfortable being involved. Before students leave for college, I think it really is wise for them to sit down and hammer out a financial strategy. Once they're there, it pays for them to touch base along the way, with their parents, just figuring out how things are going, understanding how things are progressing. Also, I think if it's possible, parents should avoid co-signing for student loans. I'm going to say it again because it places them it can place them, I should say, in a financially vulnerable position. If their children don't make the payments, they are going to be 100% liable for repaying what's owed. So it's just something to keep in mind.
I know we've been asking a lot of questions here from the student perspective during this interview, but let's be honest with ourselves. It's Sunday morning. It's fairly early. We probably have a lot of parents listening right now.
Oh, yeah.
So do you have any further advice for parents when it comes to college finance?
I would say to parents, regularly monitor how much students spend. And when they come home to visit, make sure you make some time for some candid, some open kind of money sessions, those kind of talks, just to find out how well is your student sticking to their budget? How well are they managing their money? Encourage them to ask you questions and discuss the financial problems that they might be facing if they are. You really want to talk about it. If your student is having trouble making ends meet, sit down with them, brainstorm ways to deal with the situation. Maybe they're going to have to get a part-time job. Maybe they're going to have to get used textbooks instead of new. Maybe they can cut down on their non-essential spending. Whatever it might be, I think those conversations really are key. You want to reinforce the idea with them that student loan funds should only be used for things they truly need, not just for things they want. Remind them again that every dollar they spend now is going to have to be paid back. So I think that as parents, we just have to stay involved, and we have to make sure that we're talking to our young adults.
Now, we've been talking a lot about student loans today, but that's not the only source of debt on a college campus. I know, speaking from personal experience, I know a lot of people can get into trouble with credit cards as well.
Right.
Are students still using them to get by these days?
Yeah, based on the most recent Sallie Mae statistics, student credit card use on campus is down somewhat, but 1/4 of students still carry a balance of $500 or more. That's a lot of money, and it's still happening. It might not seem like much, but it kind of is. When you talk about interest and fees, it can add up really fast. And if students aren't careful, they may leave college owing a much larger amount than that. From the very first moment, students need to recognize that when you use a credit card, again, you're making a loan that has to be paid back before too long.
So what credit card options are available for students who have a limited income or who've never had a credit card before?
Yeah, many credit card companies offer a student card. These generally take into account that students may not have developed a credit history. They also come with perks that are kind of tailored to fit student lifestyles, such as no annual fee or cash back on certain kinds of purchases. Students who can't qualify for a credit card on their own may be able to do so with a cosigner. But again, parents who undertake that role,
There's that word. Yeah.
Exactly. They need to be aware that they're going to be held responsible for any charges that their children fail to pay back. So in this situation, it may help to apply for a secured card where the student can make charges against a deposit or a pre-established amount that's set up in a bank account. So those are a couple things that students could do.
So once students get their hands on a credit card, what can they do to limit the amount they owe?
Well, the main thing, and I've said it so many times when I've been here, spending wisely. If you want to build a good credit history, only use your credit card for necessities such as textbooks, that kind of thing. Avoid buying on impulse. Students see that T-shirt or those jeans, that they think they want. They've just got to avoid that impulse buying. And they want to steer clear of cash advances. That's a big point to make. And using those credit card checks that the company will send you, those cost extra. And they really can lead to trouble. The other big point I think about limiting what they're going to end up owing on a credit card is paying their balance in full each month. Now, if a student isn't able to pay the complete balance, they want to make sure that they're paying as much as possible, more than the minimum payment, because making minimum monthly payments can also lead to trouble and lots of interest. Here's an example. If a student owed $1,000 on a credit card that had an 18% APR and they made a minimum payment of $30 every month, how long do you think it would take to pay that that off.
I don't think I want to think about how much it'll take to pay that off.
It's crazy. It could take up to 8 years to pay that balance.
Wow.
And the student will have paid back almost $700 in interest.
Oh, my goodness.
So they've got to understand. They have to understand. And this is the point. These are the times when I always like to kind of try to direct students to our website so they can learn about the cost of credit. They can understand exactly what having and managing a credit card means. On our site, www.cccs-inc.org, there's a great financial tools section, and it is just brimming with all kinds of information that would really, really be helpful to students about managing their credit cards if they're going to have them.
And if somebody wants to find out some more information, the website's a great resource, but you also have a phone number, correct?
Absolutely. Our toll-free number, it's 1-800-642-2227.
All right, Deanna, before we wrap things up here, what other resources does CCCS offer students and their families?
Well, we've got all kinds of free online courses that they can check out on our website. They cover more information about how to afford college, how to manage student loans. As a nonprofit, we offer free credit counseling for students or parents, or students and parents. You know, maybe it's something they want to do together, who need help handling credit card debt or handling student loan debt. Our counselors are certified. They provide advice at our offices locally all around the state or over the telephone. To make an appointment, again, just call us 1-800-642-2227. Please visit the site. There's all kinds of great information there.
And again, that website is www.cccs-inc.org.
Exactly.
Well, Deanna Booker, financial expert. I'm going to keep throwing that term around because I like that. I feel like I'm in the presence of royalty.
Well, you kind of are. No,
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
From Consumer Credit Counseling Service of Maryland and Delaware, Deanna Booker, always a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for all this great information.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.